The Senate Judiciary Committee chamber was unusually packed that morning. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters jostled for position, and even a few foreign correspondents had flown in, sensing something explosive. Pam Bondi sat quietly at the long table, flipping through a folder marked, Confidential, DOJ Response Timeline. She looked calm, composed, but under the surface, her presence was like a lit fuse. Across from her, Senator Lindsey Graham adjusted his tie. He had called this hearing himself, routine oversight session, as he'd claimed. But everyone knew better. Whispers had circulated for weeks about a classified memo, one that implicated multiple high-ranking officials in obstructing a federal investigation. The hearing was supposed to be theater. What no one expected, was that Bondi had brought the script, and changed the ending. MS. Bondi, Graham began, his southern drawl laid thick, I'd like to begin by reminding you that this is a fact-finding hearing, not a courtroom. So let's keep speculation and grandstanding to a minimum. Pam smiled politely. Of course, Senator. I brought facts. The room shifted. A murmur passed through the audience. Graham narrowed his eyes. She slid a sealed manila envelope across the table toward the clerk. For the record, I'm submitting internal communications from your office to a known intermediary connected to a foreign lobbying group. Dated just 2 months ago. Lindsey Graham visibly froze. Excuse me, he said, voice clipped. Bondi leaned forward. Senator, you initiated this hearing to discredit the DOJ's timeline. But what you failed to disclose was your private involvement in delaying subpoenas related to classified foreign finance reports, on the very case in question. Gasps echoed through the chamber. One of the aides dropped their pen. Graham shook his head. That's outrageous. This is slander. Pam didn't blink. I'm under oath. Are you? The audience was silent. The cameras kept rolling. Lindsey Graham's face flushed a deep red. He straightened in his chair, trying to regain control of the narrative. Let's be clear, Ms. Bondi, he said tightly. This hearing isn't about me. It's about your department's failure to provide transparency. Pam Bondi didn't flinch. She calmly opened a new folder, labeled Supplemental Communications, Senate Oversight, and removed a printed email thread. This document, she said, lifting it for the cameras, shows your direct request, through an unlisted personal email, for the DOJ to stall the unsealing of documents tied to Operation Vanguard. A case which, coincidentally, implicated several campaign donors you've met with privately. Someone in the gallery audibly gasped. Graham opened his mouth, then closed it. Pam continued, you called this a fact-finding hearing. So here are the facts. You contacted a DOJ liaison 3 times in a single week, using non-governmental channels. You cited national security risks, when, in fact, the classified documents had nothing to do with defense, and everything to do with illicit wire transfers traced back to PAC accounts. Ms. Bondi, you don't need to respond, Senator, she cut in, her voice steel. Because the Inspector General has already received this material. As of 9 a.m. this morning. A ripple of unease swept across the panel. Other senators looked at each other. The atmosphere was shifting. Suddenly, Graham didn't seem like the host of the hearing anymore. He looked like a man on trial. Chairman Durbin leaned into his mic. Ms. Bondi, are you suggesting criminal misconduct on the part of this committee member? Bondi turned slightly toward him. Mr. Chairman, I'm not suggesting. I'm confirming. That did it. Murmurs broke out across the room. Journalists scribbled furiously. A Fox News reporter mouthed, "Holy S******** on live television. And for the first time all morning, Lindsey Graham was silent. Security inside the hearing chamber tightened. 2 plainclothes U.S. Marshals had quietly entered from the side, standing near the rear door, hands folded, but alert. Most attendees didn't even notice them. Lindsey Graham did. He shuffled his notes, clearing his throat as if that might restore order. "This is an ambush," he said bitterly. "A political stunt." Pam Bondi leaned back, calmly, like someone who had already done the hard part. "I'm simply responding to the subpoena issued by this committee," she said. "And providing the truth you claim to be seeking." She reached into her binder again. "This," she said, holding up a white envelope stamped with a blue DOJ seal, "is a sealed indictment, handed down this morning by a federal grand jury in D.C. It names 3 individuals. One of them is a sitting member of this committee." Dead silence. Graham swallowed visibly. "That document is sealed," he said quickly. "How dare you disclose it in public session?" Pam's smile was faint but unmistakable. "I'm not disclosing its contents. I'm simply acknowledging its existence for the record. The U.S. Marshals know what to do." She glanced subtly toward the back of the room. The 2 marshals began walking forward, slowly, professionally. Someone in the chamber let out a quiet, "No way." Graham rose from his seat, panic flashing behind his eyes. "You're not doing this. You think you can, you're not above the law, Senator," Pam said flatly. "And you just tried to obstruct an investigation, on national television." The marshals reached the table. "Senator Graham," one of them said, "we need you to come with us. Now." "I'm a United States Senator," he barked. "This is outrageous." "Exactly," Pam said quietly. "And that's why it's happening here, out in the open. So the public finally sees it." The marshals placed a firm hand on each of Graham's arms. Flashbulbs exploded. Cameramen surged forward. Reporters yelled questions. Chairs scraped. And Lindsey Graham, still protesting, was led out of his own hearing, in handcuffs. Pam didn't gloat. She just closed her binder and waited for order to return. The footage of Senator Lindsey Graham being escorted out in handcuffs exploded across every major news outlet within minutes. It was the kind of political earthquake that instantly drowned out every other headline. CNN, breaking, Senator Graham arrested mid-hearing after DOJ bombshell from Pam Bondi. Fox News, stunning turn, Graham detained during hearing he called. C-SPAN, live footage, judiciary panel in chaos after arrest of committee member. Inside the chamber, the senators were visibly shaken. Chairman Durbin called for a 10-minute recess that stretched well past 30. Phones buzzed in every pocket. Staffers scrambled to regroup. But Pam Bondi stayed seated, reviewing her documents, calm amid the storm she had just unleashed. When the session resumed, it was no longer a hearing. It was history. Chairman Durbin cleared his throat. "Ms. Bondi, the committee would like to continue this proceeding. But under the circumstances," Pam raised a hand gently. "Mr. Chairman, I understand. But I'm not done." Durbin blinked. "You're not." She picked up a second envelope. "There's more. The documents I just submitted are part of a broader pattern. What we uncovered at the DOJ wasn't just one senator acting alone. There were coordinated efforts, emails, encrypted texts, even burner phones, all tied to delaying or manipulating active investigations tied to foreign money." Senator Klobuchar leaned in. "You're saying this was a network?" Pam nodded once. "Yes. And Lindsey Graham was only the first domino." At that, the room turned ice cold. Every senator suddenly sat up straighter. Some looked toward the exits. One visibly reached under the table for their phone. Pam let the silence settle. Then she said, "I'd advise the committee not to adjourn just yet. Because the next name is already on its way to the U.S. Attorney's Office." A wave of unease rippled across the Judiciary Committee. Faces turned pale. Whispers flared up between staffers. Everyone knew the arrest of a sitting senator was historic, but the implication of a wider conspiracy? That was nuclear. Senator Blumenthal leaned forward. "Ms. Bondi, you're suggesting multiple members of this legislative body are currently under investigation? Pam Bondi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I'm not suggesting it, she said. I'm confirming it. She set down a small, black flash drive onto the desk. This contains the redacted chain of communications handed over to the special counsel. Names, dates, meeting times, and transactions, all linked to coordinated attempts to obstruct federal subpoenas tied to Operation Vanguard. Senator Hawley narrowed his eyes. Are you accusing us of treason? Pam looked directly at him. Not treason. But bribery. Foreign influence. Obstruction. And in at least one case, money laundering through shell foundations. Gasps broke out. Senator Whitehouse shook his head, stunned. One of the aides near the corner dropped a binder with a loud thud. Pam continued. This committee prides itself on oversight. But certain members used that oversight power to bury evidence and intimidate witnesses. The DOJ knows. And so does the public, now. Senator Durbin fumbled for his gavel. We need to call an executive session. Immediately. Pam held up a hand. Before you do, I'd like to submit a final exhibit. She opened a narrow case and revealed a printed photo, zoomed-in surveillance stills showing Lindsey Graham exiting a town car at a private Georgetown residence, joined by 2 foreign nationals previously flagged by Treasury investigators. She placed it flat on the table. Taken 4 nights ago. No record of this meeting. No security detail. No briefing logs. That was it. The last straw. Senator Murkowski stood abruptly. Mr. Chairman, I move to recess this hearing until counsel for the committee can review these allegations and confer with the office of the Sergeant at Arms. Durbin slammed the gavel. Recess granted. But Pam Bondi didn't stand. As the senators rose and scrambled into private corners, some already dialing lawyers, she calmly watched it all unfold. The real hearing had only just begun. As the senators filtered out in various states of shock and denial, the Capitol's internal security quietly shifted. Hallways once open to foot traffic were suddenly cordoned off. Senate aides received encrypted alerts on their devices, restricted movement. Ongoing legal action. Pam Bondi gathered her documents slowly, methodically, before finally rising from her seat. She knew the cameras were still rolling. She paused deliberately and looked straight into one lens. The American people don't just deserve transparency, she said. They demand it. And they'll get it, starting today. With that, she exited the chamber. Downstairs, Lindsey Graham sat in a holding room beneath the Capitol, hands cuffed, eyes red with frustration. 2 agents stood guard while a DOJ official entered with a single phrase, "Your lawyer's waiting." Across town, more subpoenas were being served. Offices of 3 major political consultants were raided within the hour. One of them, long considered untouchable, was pulled into a black SUV on K Street as reporters screamed questions. Meanwhile, back at DOJ headquarters, a closed-door meeting was underway with Pam Bondi, Special Counsel Miriam Lockhart, and 2 members of the president's inner circle. "This is bigger than anyone thought," Lockhart said grimly. "And if what you're holding back is as serious as I suspect, we're going to need federal protections for multiple whistleblowers by morning." Pam handed over a flash drive labeled Level 7, access approved. "Everything you need is here," she said. Timelines, routing numbers, hidden server locations, even recordings. The kind that don't need interpretation. Lockhart looked up. "And the next target?" Pam didn't hesitate. "He's on the Intelligence Committee. And he just booked a flight to Zurich." The room froze. "We move now," Lockhart said. Pam nodded. At precisely 11:03 p.m., a private Gulfstream G550 registered under a shell company lifted off from Dulles International Airport, headed for Zurich. On board, Senator Randall Pierce, a senior member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, now the prime focus of Pam Bondi's next move. He had been cautious. He'd used encrypted phones, silent couriers, offshore legal proxies. But he hadn't accounted for a sealed FISA warrant signed 2 days prior, after Bondi's initial testimony. As the jet crossed the Atlantic, Pam was already steps ahead. Back in D.C., she entered a secure briefing room beneath the DOJ's CyberOps division. A live satellite feed tracked the aircraft's flight path, its registered aliases, and the credentials used to charter it, linked directly to a crypto transfer from a now-flagged Serbian account. "Pull up the Zurich logs," Pam instructed the tech officer. On the screen appeared a map of safe houses, embassy residencies, and private banks suspected of housing illicit funds from U.S. lawmakers and their intermediaries. "Senator Pierce isn't running," she said. "He's laundering. Again. Same network Graham used, only deeper." "Do we intercept the jet?" asked Special Counsel Lockhart. Pam shook her head. "Not yet. Let him land. Let him feel safe." At that same moment, in Geneva, U.S. allies from Interpol prepared a warrant packet based on files Pam had authorized just hours earlier. It included records of meetings Pierce held with individuals under international sanction, plus surveillance audio of him mentioning a senior DOJ informant by name. Her name. Pam watched the red dot representing Pierce's jet glide across the Atlantic. "Calm, steady. We let him step off the plane," she said. "Then we take down the banker. And after that," she looked to Lockhart, "we bring Senator Pierce back to D.C., in cuffs." At 7:12 a.m. local time, Senator Randall Pierce's private jet landed in Zurich. He stepped off the aircraft wearing dark sunglasses, flanked by 2 associates posing as legal advisors. He thought he was untouchable. He had no idea he was already surrounded. Half a block from the private airstrip, Swiss authorities and Interpol agents were staging in an underground garage. Among them was a covert U.S. liaison, sent directly by Pam Bondi, tasked with a quiet, surgical takedown of the senator's primary contact, Victor Baumann. Baumann was no ordinary banker. He managed a shadow trust with more than $800 million in political slush funds, art assets, and crypto, hidden behind a lattice of offshore entities. He was fluent in 6 languages, wore gloves in every meeting, and never used electronic devices personally. But he made one mistake: he trusted Pierce. At 9:38 a.m., Baumann arrived at a cafe near Lake Zurich for what he believed was a discreet meet. Instead, he was greeted by a man in a crisp gray suit who spoke with a Midwestern accent. "You're being recorded, Victor. And if you don't want to spend the next 30 years in U.S. custody, you'll cooperate, immediately." Baumann froze. His hands began to tremble. He scanned the cafe, saw subtle movements, men adjusting earpieces, a woman tapping her cup twice. He knew the game was over. Meanwhile, back in D.C., Pam Bondi stood before a closed congressional subcommittee, presenting real-time updates. "Victor Baumann has agreed to a full digital handover," she told them. "Account names, transaction trails, passkeys, and secure backups. Every senator he's ever worked with. Every foreign client. Every shell company." A stunned silence followed. Then, a single question from Senator Klobuchar: "How many sitting U.S. officials are implicated?" Pam didn't blink. 7. The room went still. 7. That number hit like a brick. Not aides. Not consultants. 7 elected officials, sitting in the halls of the U.S. government, actively compromised. Pam Bondi placed a single sheet of paper on the committee table. It was blank to the cameras, but the faces of those who saw it twisted in disbelief. The names were a mix of party lines, seniority, and influence, some of the most visible faces in American politics. Senator Durbin leaned in, scanning the list, then whispered, "Good God," Pam spoke clearly. Baumann's files confirmed they laundered campaign funds, funneled classified briefings, and blocked national security subpoenas. In exchange for favors, foreign contracts, energy assets, and untraceable crypto wallets. Senator Booker looked around nervously. Have they been notified? Pam shook her head. No. And they won't be. There was a knock at the secure door. A DOJ courier entered with a steel briefcase, handcuffed to his wrist. Pam entered a 6-digit code on a biometric pad and removed 3 color-coded folders inside: red, arrest ready; blue, under surveillance; black, untraceable communications. She tapped the red one. This folder contains 2 priority arrests. The DOJ has already mobilized teams. One in Nevada. The other, she paused, looking at Senator Blumenthal, is closer than you think. Eyes widened. Blumenthal tensed. Are you implying someone on this committee? I'm not implying anything, she said calmly. I'm delivering facts. Back in Zurich, Interpol agents walked Victor Baumann through a private exit, shielded by bulletproof vans. He clutched a file labeled Asset 614C, Randall Pierce. Behind them, Pierce, unaware of Baumann's cooperation, walked into the banker's estate, right into a sting operation. He didn't make it 5 steps before he was surrounded. And in Washington, as news of the Zurich arrest broke, 4 senators suddenly canceled public appearances. 2 turned off their phones. 1 tried to board a red-eye flight. Too late. By morning, the U.S. Capitol was under unprecedented lockdown, not for violence, but for containment. Within 12 hours of Pam Bondi's explosive disclosures, 2 senators had been arrested, 3 were under active surveillance, and 1, Senator Randall Pierce, was being flown back from Zurich under international extradition. The final arrest came just before sunrise. Senator Elaine Vickers, long considered a clean face of bipartisan unity, was caught attempting to wipe a secure tablet from a private Wi-Fi hotspot in Georgetown. The tablet was recovered. Inside were encrypted folders labeled, Svalbard. Pack Surge 2022. G8 Relay. Each file tied directly into the Baumann network. Each one revealed routes used to transfer foreign funds into political campaigns, charities, and even think tanks. It was the end of a political era, exposed by a single woman who refused to back down. At DOJ headquarters, 9:45 a.m. reporters swarmed the steps. Sirens howled in the distance. Inside, Pam Bondi gave a final closed-door debriefing with the Attorney General and Special Counsel Lockhart. The media will spin this in 100 directions, Lockhart said. But history will remember one thing: you did what Congress was too afraid to do. Pam stood, picking up her binder. No one should be above the law. Not even the ones who write it. As she stepped outside, cameras surged forward. Microphones hovered. Questions flew. Ms. Bondi. Did you anticipate it would go this far? Will more senators be arrested? Is this the beginning of the largest political takedown in history? Pam paused at the podium. I didn't come here to take anyone down, she said calmly. I came here to lift the truth up. What happened next was the result of choices made in darkness, by people who thought no one would ever turn on the light. With that, she turned and walked down the steps, not as a political figure, but as the woman who held the line when everyone else looked away. And behind her, the system, finally, began to clean itself.